What drives a person to destroy something meant for joy? In the quiet suburban enclave of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and pristine picket fences define the neighborhood, Karen Delaney's name was whispered with a mix of fear and disdain. She wasn't always this way, at least. That's what the older residents claimed. Once a cheerful mother of two, Karen had unraveled over the years, her bitterness seeping into every corner of the community. But no one could have predicted the day she'd take a sledgehammer to the playground slide, shattering not just metal and plastic, but the fragile piece of Willow Creek. It was a sweltering July afternoon, the kind where the air shimmered with heat and tempers flared just as easily. The playground, a vibrant hub for the neighborhood's children, buzzed with laughter. The Slidia towering, twisting structure painted in bright blues and yellows was the crown jewel, funded by years of HOA bake sales and car washes. Kids called it the Dragon for its serpentine curves, and parents loved it for the hours of distraction it provided. But Karen saw it differently. To her, it was a symbol of everything wrong with Willow Creek. The cliquey parents, the smug HOA board, the constant judgment she felt pressing down on her. Karen's descent hadn't been sudden. It started 3 years earlier when her husband, Tom, left her for a younger woman from the city. The divorce was messy, public, and left Karen with a crumbling sense of self. Her teenage daughters, Mia and Lily, withdrew, embarrassed by their mother's increasingly erratic behavior. Karen's once tidy home became a chaotic mess, with unopened bills piling up and weeds choking the garden. Neighbors noticed her snapping at kids for riding bikes too close to her driveway or glaring at families during HOA meetings. "She's unhinged," they'd whisper, but no one reached out. Instead, they avoided her, leaving Karen to stew in her isolation. That afternoon, the spark that ignited Karen's rage was deceptively small. She'd been served an HOA violation notice for her unkempt lawn, her third that year. The letter, signed by the board president, Ellen Whitaker, was polite but firm, warning of fines if the issue wasn't addressed. To Karen, it was a personal attack, a smug declaration of her failure. She stood in her kitchen, clutching the letter, her hands trembling. Outside, she heard the shrieks of children on the playground, their joy a stark contrast to her misery. Something snapped. She didn't plan it. Not really. Karen stormed to her garage, grabbed a sledgehammer Tom had left behind, and marched toward the playground. Neighbors later described the scene like something out of a nightmare. Karen, her face contorted with fury, swinging the heavy tool at the slide. Each blow rang out like a gunshot, metal screeching as the structure buckled. Children screamed and scattered, parents frozen in shock. "You think you're better than me?" Karen shouted, her voice raw. "This whole place is a lie." By the time she was done, the slide was a mangled heap, its bright colors dulled by dust and dents. Enter Javier Morales, the neighborhood's quiet landscaper, who had been trimming hedges nearby. Javier was an enigma to most of Willow Creek, a single father who kept to himself, his weathered hands and soft-spoken demeanor hiding a past no one bothered to ask about. He'd moved to the neighborhood a year ago, renting a modest house on the edge of the subdivision. Unlike the other residents, who saw Karen as a problem to avoid, Javier had always felt a pang of empathy for her. He'd seen her daughter's embarrassed glances, heard the whispers about her unraveling life. When he saw Karen attacking the slide, he didn't hesitate. Dropping his shears, he ran toward her. "Karen, stop!" Javier called, his voice steady but urgent. She froze, sledgehammer raised, her chest heaving. For a moment, their eyes locked, hers wild with pain, his calm but pleading. "This isn't you," he said softly. "You're hurting, but this won't fix it." The words seemed to pierce her, and the sledgehammer slipped from her hands, clattering to the ground. Karen collapsed, sobbing, as Javier knelt beside her, shielding her from the growing crowd of onlookers. But the damage was done. Ellen Whitaker, ever the HOA enforcer, was already on her phone, calling the police and rallying the board. By evening, Karen was in custody, charged with vandalism and public disturbance. The neighborhood was abuzz, but not with sympathy. To most, Karen was a villain, her actions proof of her instability. The HOA wasted no time, filing a civil lawsuit to recover the cost of replacing the slide $120,000 and tacking on punitive damages for the community's emotional distress. The total came to $170,000, a sum Karen couldn't possibly pay. What no one expected was Javier's role in the aftermath. At the HOA meeting the following week, as residents demanded Karen's punishment, Javier stood up. His voice, usually so reserved, carried a quiet strength. "I know what she did was wrong," he said. "But Karen's been drowning, and none of us threw her a lifeline. I've been where she is alone, angry, lost. I lost my wife to cancer, my home to debt. I could have been her, swinging that hammer. We're so quick to judge. But who here has even asked her why?" His words hung heavy in the room. Some residents shifted uncomfortably, others scoffed. Ellen, her lips pursed, dismissed Javier's plea. "Actions have consequences," she said coldly. "We can't let this slide, no pun intended." But Javier's speech planted a seed. A few neighbors, like Sarah Nguyen, a young mother who'd always felt uneasy about the HOA's rigidity, began to question the lawsuit's severity. Sarah had seen Karen's daughters, Mia and Lily, sitting quietly at the playground's edge, their faces pale with shame. "Maybe we've all failed her," Sarah whispered to her husband later that night. The trial was a spectacle. Karen, represented by a weary public defender, sat silently as the HOA's lawyer painted her as a menace. The slide's destruction, they argued, wasn't just vandalism, it was an attack on the community's values. Karen's defense was weak. She admitted her guilt but couldn't explain her rage, not in a way the court could understand. I couldn't take it anymore," she mumbled. The judge, unmoved, upheld the HOA's claim. Karen was ordered to pay the full $170,000, a fine that would bankrupt her and force the sale of her home. But the twist came not in the courtroom, but in the weeks that followed. Javier, determined to help, started a quiet fundraiser for Karen's daughters. He didn't ask for much, just enough to cover their school supplies and a few months' rent for an apartment if Karen lost the house. To everyone's surprise, donations poured in. Sarah Nguyen contributed first, then others followed, some anonymously. Even a few HOA board members, guilt gnawing at them, chipped in. The fundraiser raised $20,000, not enough to save Karen's home, but enough to give Mia and Lily a lifeline. Karen, however, couldn't be saved. The weight of the fine, the public humiliation, and her daughter's growing distance crushed her. She sold the house, moved to a cramped apartment on the city's outskirts, and withdrew completely. Mia and Lily, now living with their father, rarely spoke of her. The playground slide was replaced, shinier and grander than before, but the neighborhood felt colder. Javier's words lingered, a quiet rebuke to Willow Creek's polished facade. Had they judged too quickly? Had they failed to see Karen's pain until it exploded? The final blow came months later, when Sarah found a letter slipped under her door. It was from Karen, written in shaky handwriting. "Thank you for helping my girls," it read. "I'm sorry for what I did. I just wanted to be seen." Sarah showed it to Javier, tears in her eyes. "She's gone," Sarah said. "Moved away. No one knows where." Javier nodded, his face heavy with regret. He tried to reach her, but some wounds were too deep. Willow Creek moved on. The new slide gleamed under the summer sun, children's laughter echoing once more. But for those who remembered Sarah, Javier, a few others, the playground was a reminder of what happens when pain is ignored, when a community chooses judgment over compassion. Karen's rage had wrecked more than a slide. It had exposed the cracks in a neighborhood that prided itself on perfection. And though the slide was rebuilt, those cracks remained, hidden but unforgotten. ND.